Phoenix is one of my favorite heroes. I truly enjoy playing her. I think she's a lot of fun. I think she's pretty unique to play. And I see a lot of people asking questions of the best way to play Phoenix or the most interesting way or a new way to play Phoenix. So I thought what we do for this video is something a little bit different is I'm going to take a deck that I've made that's for Phoenix that I really enjoy. I enjoy playing this deck. I think it works pretty well. I think it's pretty strong. And we're going to break down the deck. We're going to talk about the cards that are in it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about strategy because that's one thing we don't really talk too much on this channel or just in general is enough about strategy. So we'll talk a little bit of strategy as well. The deck link will be down below in the description. But let's pop over to the table and see the cards. All right, we have everything laid out here on the table for you all to see. These are just our hero cards on this side, and we'll just work left to right. But first we have our allies, right? And I'm running an aggression deck. I like Phoenix a lot in aggression, not because she doesn't have good attack, she does, but I just think to really double down on that attack is kind of really nice. And really it's for Wolverine and Psylocke I enjoy a lot, and I think Psychic Assault is a really good card because you do want to flip down now and again. So the allies that I will run are Wolverine, Psylocke, and Sunfire. And I have Sunfire in there as really just a cheap X-Men ally in the aggression deck. If another card comes out later that's cheaper and better, then I'll use that one. But I really like that card in this deck. Psylocke I like to confuse my enemies with if I'm able to flip down. Now, stalwart or steady enemies, you might have to change this deck a little bit and change that up slightly. But generally speaking, against most of the villains that are not steady and stalwart, this will work well. Wolverine I love in aggression in general because I want piercing. I want to be able to do as much piercing as possible. So I love Wolverine for that. Then we have Forge as another cheap ally to get out there. We have Colossus. We have Angel and Professor X. Now, I like Colossus and Angel because they are one cheaper for if you have an X-Men or a mutant trait, which is really nice. So it brings that Angel effective cost down to 2, Colossus down to 3. Colossus is a good blocker, and Jean Grey needs as many blockers as possible because she only has 9 hit points, which is kind of rough. Professor X is great to help you thwart or help you ready up, which is really useful, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Then as far as events go, we only have 5 extra events added. 2 of them are X-Men instruction because we do want to flip down now and again, not a ton, but we do want to flip down a bit, and we want to choose up to 2 X-Men allies, discard pile and shuffle them into your deck. If X-Mansion is in play, draw a card. We do have an X-Mansion, so we will want to get that in play first. But again, we're going to be kind of cycling through these allies, or if you get a hand where you get 3 good allies, but you can only play 1, or you get 2 good allies and you can only play 1 of them, right? It's nice to be able to get that back into your deck, so it's not so bad when you just end up discarding an ally, especially early on in the game. Psychic Assault, we have 3 of them. It's an absolutely fantastic card. You can only do it if you have the Psionic trait, and you get to deal 3 damage to an enemy and confuse that enemy, which is really helpful. It's such an easy confuse for aggression cards. I really like that at only 2 costs. As far as upgrades go, we only have Endurance. Again, anything that helps her get more life, I'm 100% for. So there you go. So I'm a big fan of Endurance on that. And then we have, for supports, we have a bunch. We have a bunch of supports. So we have Team Building Exercise, which I like a lot because, again, we're using Psionic cards. She's a Psionic and an X-Men. All of her allies are X-Men, so it gets them in a little bit cheaper. Her big attack is a Psionic attack. Her other attack is a Psionic attack. And that's it. No, just play a card from your hand. So Mental Paralysis, Psionic, right? A lot of these are Psionic. Actually, I think all of them are Psionic, right? Except for like her support and upgrade. But they're pretty much all Psionic, so it'll help bring the cost down. And plus, it's a cheaper card than using, let's say, the X-Jet, right? Where it's a 3-cost card. This is only a 2-cost card. So then we have Utopia. We'll work our way down. And this states that if each of your allies has the X-Men trait, which they should. All your allies should have the X-Men trait. You increase your ally limit by 1. And then after an X-Men ally enters play, you get to exhaust Utopia and then to ready an X-Men ally. So this could be super helpful. So this is super helpful because, again, if we get this card out and we exhaust, we're able to ready up either Wolverine or somebody else, or we can Wolver up Phoenix, which could be super useful. And we'll get into why you want to ready up Phoenix a fair amount. I think that's something you want to do quite a bit. Boot Camp is the one support I have that's from Aggression, which states that each ally you control gets +1 attack, which could be absolutely huge, especially, again, Wolverine is kind of the key here because Wolverine's now swinging for 4 amount of damage from an ally is super huge. But even Forge ends up doing 2 then. Angel ends up up doing, I think, 3 then. Colossus can do 4. Professor X can swing for 1. Psylocke can do 2, plus the other one if you remove a psionic counter. And Sunfire they can do 3. So, right, you're getting a lot of aggression allies that are now swinging for a lot of damage. And that's why I really like Boot Camp. It is one of our more expensive cards, though. Cerebro is great. This is a card I like to get out early on for her because if you're a mutant, it's alter ego only, but you can exhaust Cerebro to search the top 5 cards of your deck for an X-Men ally and then add that card to your hand. But if it's psionic, you search the entire thing, right? Like you search the entire deck. So if you can get that out early on, like turn 1, I can search for any ally I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm just looking for Forge or Colossus or Angel, something cheap to get out there that's going to just get me some easy blocks early on in the game, not necessarily looking for Wolverine right away. Then we have a crew quarters because, again, we are going to be flipping down now and again, so it's nice to be able to exhaust this to just heal damage. Now, you could change this with, not Death Focus. What is it called? The one where it adds +2 to your recovery. You could do that if you're playing to heal a lot on the alter ego side. I usually don't, but you can do that instead, right? Downtime, that's what I'm thinking of, downtime. You could use downtime if you really want to. X-Mansion, as we discussed before, is kind of huge because X-Mansion does allow us to draw a card with X-Men instruction, but on top of that, exhaust X-Mansion, heal 1 damage from a mutant or X-Men character. Any player can trigger it. We're using this to either heal ourselves, just like crew quarters is, or again, if we're flipping down and one of our allies needs a little bit of health bump, then we're going to do that. As far as our doubles, we have our 3 normal doubles and then 2 Power of All of Us. You might want to get rid of these cards if you think you need more with the aggression cards, but generally speaking, a lot of my gray cards are 2 costs, so that's where we have that. And lastly, before I forget, Moira, who I think is absolutely huge. After a mutant alter ego changes into hero form, exhaust Moira Taggart's card. That hero controller draws 1 card, which is a super nice card. Now, the other thing you can add that I didn't add here, and let's say you want to get rid of crew quarters, you could put an X gene or something like that gets you a resource generator for one of your cards, because your deck is a little bit expensive. This is the main critique for Jean Grey, is that her deck is a bit expensive. So you can do that, right? You could put in an X gene if you want as well, or take out Moira or something else. But I feel like team building is super helpful in general, because not only is it helping your deck, but it's helping all your allies get in as well, right? Because you're sharing the trait with the X-Men trait. So that's everything that we have on the table. And then let's talk a little bit about strategy. So I'll give some examples soon down the table of different strategy and kind of what I'm thinking in general. But again, you can see the overall idea is that we are really focusing on allies throughout the game. And I think a lot of people see Phoenix as cards and they either think they're not that good, or they want to play a long-term game with her, or something else. Now, the way I like to play her is basically mostly a tempo exercise, right? So I'm trying to win in 4 to 6 rounds is really my goal. I don't want the game to go much longer than that. I want it to be pretty short, generally speaking. But yeah, I want it to be a fairly quick game. And there's kind of a strategy of how I approach it on one side versus the other. And the reason I say that is because Jean Grey starts with 3 threat removal, which in the beginning of the game is huge for a solo player. For solo players, that will keep the game in check for a long time, right? Three threat removal is kind of huge. So I think that's a really strong point for her. And then when you're ready to go, hopefully in 4 turns, you're now swinging for 3 when you become unleashed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But that's where you can really start doing a massive amount of attack, and you're not really worrying about the main scheme anymore, because once I go unleashed, I'm trying to win like a turn or 2. Worst case scenario, 3. But we can talk a little bit about that. Let's go back down to the table and kind of discuss opening hand and late hand strategies. All right, so let's discuss a little bit of strategy while I shuffle these cards up, because I want to make sure you recognize that they're shuffled. But we start off with our 4 counters, right? We start off on the restrained side. And in general, when I flip over, again, when I'm exhausting Phoenix, I'm exhausting her to basically thwart in the beginning. Later on, I will start adding more attack, but not for a little while. Now, we start off with our 4 counters, which basically you get to remove 1 counter from Phoenix Force to generate a wild resource. And I'm using them, again, almost every single round, and I'm trying to use them in the first 4 rounds. The second I get rid of the last one, we flip over, then we're going to start swinging for 3, which is massive, right? Now, we can still get a counter or 2 if we get Cyclops out there or something like that, which isn't going to hurt us, but I don't really want to go back to the restrained side. That's actually not something I'm really interested in doing. Once I flip over to this side, I'm kind of going for it, right? I'm going for the win. So what I thought would be interesting to do is we'll do a little bit of an opening hand, right? So we'll shuffle this up and we'll draw a bunch of cards and show what we're trying to do, or what I would do with a random opening hand. Now, again, I want to get a cheap blocker out pretty quickly on. I either want to get my shield out, right? Shield can help too, because it gives us five basic block, right? Or allies, right? That's kind of what I'm looking for if I didn't already say that. But Cerebro, allies, and cheap shield. I don't think I phrased that right. So Cerebro, ally, and allies and cheap shield is what we're looking for. So let us just draw 5 random cards. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, for example, we got Angel, which is really going to be a 2-cost card for us. We got Phoenix Firebird, X-Mansion, Team Building, and Telekinetic Attack. Now, while this would be great to have like later on in the game to do massive amounts of damage, it doesn't make sense right now, right? It's not a super important thing we need to do. So I would get rid of this card. That would not be useful to us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They only draw 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thinking about hero side already. And Psychic Blast. So Telekinetic Attack wouldn't be super useful to us right now. Psychic Blast is probably not going to be useful to us right now. Phoenix Firebird is probably not useful yet. I would like this down the road, but not just yet, which leaves us with X-Mansion, Angel, and Team Building. Now, I'm probably going to get rid of X-Mansion in this situation because I'm not worried about healing it. I'm not worried about the card draw yet. Like, that's not something I'm completely worried about. But I like the idea of getting Team Building out, and that will work with Angel right away. So I would draw 4 more cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. See what we get. And we got some decent cards. I got her suit, another Psychic Blast, which we don't really care about. Her suit, X would be nice, but I probably wouldn't do right away unless there's a lot of threat on the main scheme pretty early on. The suit I don't mind, but it's not like my favorite thing in the world, so I'm not going to really stress too much about that. So even with this hand, right now, what I probably do is we would probably flip up to our hero side. I want to get Team Building into play, so I would use one of our counters. I would get rid of probably X because it's not going to work out with him, which gets us Team Building. We can use Team Building, so we use 1 and then another card, 2 to play Angel, and then we would have the ability to exhaust for a 3-threat removal, throw away a card to play Phoenix Firebird. We would probably remove another counter at that point to ready ourselves up. Or if we really need the 2 more counters, we could place the 2 more on. That's fine too. And then Angel now we could do a quick attack with to kind of do some damage. If we want to ready up and thwart 3 more, if we have to deal with a side scheme early on, or we just need to ping off a damage, we can do that. Or again, you could take the 2 counters back if you rather do that. And then we're thwarting for 3, and that's the main idea. So that gives you a really rough idea of kind of how I would start my opening hand that's just randomly drawn. All right, I thought we would do it one more time just so that you can see it once again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These will be, this is shuffled, so it's not a random set of cards. So we have Rise from the Ashes, Mind Control, Utopia, Psylocke, Telepathic Trickery, and X-Men Instruction. So funny enough, I really don't like any of these cards. Utopia is not terrible, and Psylocke isn't bad for trying to flip down. So I might hold Psylocke to be a little aggressive right out of the gate. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the rest of them I wouldn't really care about. So I would throw away all 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with Psylocke. All right, so we would have... Ooh, we'd have some interesting cards. So I'd probably use a double right away to play in Moira. I really like Moira. I think she'd be really good pretty early on. Now, the question is, do we want to put Cerebro into play? Because this will allow us to get a cheap X-Men ally out there, which might be really nice. So I'm kind of thinking that we'll throw away X-Men Instruction to play Cerebro. We can use Cerebro then to search for... I actually think I would search for Colossus. We can shuffle that up. When we flip up, we would exhaust this to draw a card. We'd see what we get. Phoenix Fire Suit doesn't really help us a ton, but that's okay. And then we could dump really 3 cards if we want to play Colossus, who would come in with a tough. If you wanted to really hold on to like endurance, let's say, you could use a counter instead. Then we have Colossus, who gives us 2 blocks, right? Which is really helpful for Phoenix. That allows us to thwart, to do some other stuff, to mess around with things. So again, that was a completely different set of hands, but you can see what I'm kind of looking for. I want that block early on. And then I'm hoping now, let's just say status quo happens. He loses his stuff. 2, 3, 4, 5. We draw 5 new cards, and now we have our shield, which would be really nice, or we have Wolverine, which is actually probably the better card to go for right now, especially because we have Colossus as another blocker. So I really would dump these 3 cards and use a Phoenix counter to play Wolverine. And now I already have 2 attackers out there. Wolverine can swing for a bunch, right? Colossus can swing for some. If I've kept the thwart down, I would think about flipping down at this point, especially if I can play with the scheme. And then this way, the next hand, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the power of all of us we already had. So now we're looking at an easy way to play team building. We can work it with Angel, get Sunfire out, all that fun stuff. And then we could also search for another ally. Let's just say we wanted Professor X. When we flip back up, we can use Moira to draw a card. You can already see like we're getting a decent hand now at this point. Then a lot of different things we can work with. Plus we have our resource or a wild resource that we can use at some point. So you can kind of see how like we're building pretty fast with a double to put team building in, which now, makes things cheaper, which can help us out. You could throw away 2 cards, for example, to put an X, and now we have 3 blocker or another new blocker out there, and use Colossus now for attacking and whatever else. So that gives you just 2 examples of how I would play kind of the early game with Phoenix. All right, so let's say we're at the late stage of the game, right? We're getting near the end, and we lost our last Phoenix counter. This is it. This is going to be our last big push that we're looking for. And let's see what we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I did a quick shuffle, and we draw, let's say, a Forge, a double, X, telekinetic attack. All right, so we got some interesting things going on. So for example, a final turn of what you're kind of looking for is that we do have a boot camp out in play. That is a card I would like later on, because right now on the board, we have 7 attack between just these 2 heroes themselves, and we're swinging for 3, so that's an extra 10 right there. So something I would look at is a lot of final villains have close to like 18 life, let's just say, on the final flip, right? And let's say that the final villain, you've timed it out so they only have 2 life left. Well, you could do something where you play a Phoenix, right? And you exhaust Phoenix. Let's say it knocks him out, does 3 damage, flips the villain to the next phase where they have, 18 life. We're going to do 3, drops them down to 15. We're going to throw away a double, to play Forge, let's say. And then after playing Forge, we can use Utopia to then ready ourselves up. If they have 15, right, we can do another 4 there, which brings it down to 11. This brings it down to 9. 8, 7, 6, and then we can throw away 2 cards and use team building to play telekinetic attack to do 9 more damage, right? You can see how explosive she could be at the end with her damage, but I do think the best way of using her right now is cards that, 1, allow her to ready up, because to be able to swing 3 repeatedly, or thwart 3, depending on where you are in the game, is super helpful. And again, getting those pretty strong allies out there, especially Wolverine, who does have piercing, so you don't have to worry about tough as much, makes it really strong. And telekinetic attack is a really strong card, especially that it does have overkill. So if you are dealing with an enemy first that you need to take out and do a little bit of extra damage onto the villain, you can do that, right? And then there's different ways to work that. But that is general late stage game, kind of how I'm looking at things and how I would play things. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. This was, again, just an example of a way that I like to play Phoenix. It's not necessarily the best way. It's not the only way. There's tons of different ways to play her, but this is how I've been playing her a lot, and I've really enjoyed playing her this way. So if you like this kind of video, let me know. Let me know down in the comments, or if there's certain other heroes you want me to do this with. I'm more than happy to. And again, the link to the video will be down in the description. Or if you want me to show a different way to play Phoenix, or if you just like this style of video, let me know. And if you made this far, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that yet. I really appreciate it. See you all next time.